So I will start. So yeah, again, thank you so much for having me. I wish I would have been there in person, but hopefully next year. And I definitely actually wanted to come over to Israel and take a look. And really, I love Tel Aviv, what I heard so far. So I'm really, really hoping it turns out that I can visit it soon. So yeah, but today I'm going to talk about SEO in Angular, and of course how you can achieve that even better with server-side rendering and Angular Universal. First of all, of course, why is Angular so powerful? Why do we want to all use Angular? Of course, we have just one index.html file, we have just one file, and everything, every content inside is rendered in this one HTML file. So we're putting a lot of JavaScript code actually to the web browser, and everything is just rendered inside the web browser. Because back in the days we used PHP, we rendered everything on the server and put strings together and just pushed everything inside the client. So we just needed to refresh the whole page, even if it just would have fetched some data. That is, of course, a bad user experience. So we pushed everything to the client. We have the client-side rendering, and hence, of course, a way better performance. So far to Angular, like, what is SEO actually, if you really aren't familiar with what this actually means? Basically this, we want to be, when we are producing a web page of us or our product, for example, we're producing cat t-shirts or something like that, and someone is searching for cat t-shirts, we want to be the first displayed result when someone is searching for cat t-shirts. This is our goal, and this is actually what SEO is. We want to, and we will learn during the talk, how we can achieve this, and what might be the issue of a single-page application to actually achieving this goal. So basically, of course, SEO increases their organic discovery. Like, even though if someone just maybe typing cat, staying at this example inside the search console, we might be findable by someone who isn't necessarily looking for cat t-shirts, but just because the person typed cat into the search console, we might appear. And then a person might think, yeah, to a beautiful cat out there, I want to have a cat t-shirt. And so it's a great 24/7 promotion, and of course a great marketing for us, having a great SEO result. As well, maybe it already occurred to you that you are searching something, maybe on Stack Overflow, and we tend to think the search results being on the top 5 search results, we trust them more because Google ranked them, for example, Google or Bing, they ranked them on the top 5 results. So we tend to think, yeah, this answer or this link might be really truthfully, and the credibility is really high. So we tend to click on these pages, of course, a lot more than some result that is on the 11th page or something. So yes, it also improves the credibility and trust of our web pages. And as well, it has a good return of investment, since you will see that you don't have to do actually so much to having a great SEO, but we will come to that later. So what is actually the big deal of SEO now with Angular or specific single-page application? Of course, we need to know a little bit how search engine working, but first of all, we need to know search engines crawls for the index.html. Of course, they're having a list of a lot of websites, and they're crawling for the index.html. But what will they see then when they're crawling for Angular page? Nothing, actually, because it's just plain HTML, and there is the common app root HTML tag over there. That is, of course, the selector for another web component, an Angular component, but nothing more, right? So there's nothing for the crawler to actually get out of this web page. And this issue we need to conquer, and this is what I will talk about in my talk today. So let me shortly give a small introduction of myself again, but Muela did it already really great. So yes, I'm a Google Developer Expert in Angular. I'm working actually with a lot of clients as a trainer and consultant, And of course, I focused myself on RxJS, state management, and of course, SEO to help companies improving their discoverability on the World Wide Web. If you have any kind of question, you can always ping me on Twitter. And my DMs are always open, not only for SEO, but any other stuff, actually Angular related as well, of course. And also, as Shmuela said, I'm an anti-girls member, and hopefully we can create some more great anti-girls events in person this year or next year. So yeah, as I said, enough for myself, let's talk about search engines. We need to know a bit how they actually work, to know what we can improve on our website to get a higher SEO score. Basically, all search engine bots or all crawler bots, they have a straightforward, they proceed really straightforwardly. So they crawl a website, they have a huge list of all the websites, and actually they also store internally how often they should crawl a website. For example, if we have a newspaper website, this needs to be crawled daily or even hourly, because the content is, of course, changing so many times throughout the day. So the search engine bot has an entry, okay, I need to really crawl this web page hourly or daily. But of course, other websites like our private personal web page, maybe once in a year. But actually, we can even trigger that. Each search console or each search engine bot has an official web page as a trigger. There's, for example, the Google Search Console. You can trigger and tell the Google bot, please, now I did a lot of SEO improvements, please crawl my website again. After the crawling phase, of course, they try to find anything on this web page to get some content, to get to know what your website is about. And for this, it uses everything what is inside the HTML tags. Inside this head tag and inside the meta tags, we will come to that soon. And of course, maybe during the index phase, the crawler bot sees other URLs or other links, maybe going to another page or to a subpage of your application. So it again will crawl this web page as well and try to index it. So it's more like a never-ending loop till every URL of your web page was crawled and indexed. And this is actually basically what the crawler looks for, the meta tags. Actually, everyone knows the meta tags, but a lot of person actually ignoring them or don't give them too much emphasis during the website development. But it's really easy, because putting the right and correct meta tags on your website increases your SEO score dramatically already. But these meta tags are not displayed on your website. And actually there, as the name, of course, itself stands for, it includes all meta information like the encoding format like UTF-8 or 16, like the language, or even some instructions to some bots, or of course, description to the whole web page. Another fun fact is that there exists something like the keywords meta tag, and everyone in a couple of years ago was really eager to put everything inside this keywords meta tag. But recently, Google actually released a video, recently, it was maybe a couple of months ago, released a movie about how the Googlebot works and working together with the meta tags. And then they admitted actually that the Googlebot, for example, doesn't care about the keywords inside the meta tag at all. And people with just a small fun story or fun fact, because everyone was really putting every information inside the keywords. But what is really important is the description meta tag and the title, the page title. You can actually achieve this quite easily, since Angular is already providing two services. You can inject inside, for example, inside the SEO service. You can then inject inside the component to set the title and set the meta information. And then you can, for example, create a function in a default meta information where you call the title service and where you call the meta service to actually set some meta information like the description and the author or some instruction for the bots, and of course the title of the web page. Let us shortly take a look into that. For that, I created a small demo website. Of course, since I love Pokemon so much, I created a Pokédex, but it's not really fancy. It's just like a small master detail view actually. So if I click here and see details, I get a better detail view. Nothing really special. What is quite important and nice to see is if you now look at the HTML, we see there's basically nothing a Qualibot could actually get from this page. So, but what is quite nice, if you, for example, get to the already rendered version, we see here inside the header, we have a title like Martina's Pokédex here on the top. And of course, I added already some metadata information, also for some social media bots. Of course, there are Twitter bots crawling your website as well. You can give these kind of bots special instructions as well. Maybe you know, if you put a URL inside a tweet, it might sometimes get rendered to a picture and some meta information like the description and title, and sometimes it doesn't. And this is just a reason because the developer of the website either put this meta tags for the Twitter bot inside here or not. So all social media bots actually have these kinds of meta tags as well for the specific kind of social media bot. And of course, if you click on the detail page, we like to have this meta information updated like it did right now to have specific more information for this subpage to feed the crawler bot with all information of the subpages as well. So here, yes, and now I have a specific kind of description for this specific detailed Pokemon of Bulbasaur. And of course it is from type grass and poison. If you don't know Pokemon, it's not important, but every Pokemon has a specific kind of type. How can we achieve this? As I said, I implemented an SEO service which actually injects here these two kind of, the meta and the title service. And this has nothing to do right now with Angular Universal. It's just these two services being provided by Angular itself, by the platform browser package actually. And this updates and add tags by calling the corresponding function on the services. As well, setting the title from each page and subpage by calling set title on this specific service. So basically this is quite straightforward and quite simple. On the detail component, I do nothing more than injecting this SEO service, and whenever I get the Pokemon with this specific kind of ID that was just clicked, I just set the metadata and the title to update all the HTML tags. So far so good, nothing like really special actually. Okay. All is fine, but in the beginning I said, yes, but the index.html file is empty, as we saw, as we looked at the HTML side and we saw that there is no meta text rendered, there is nothing actually there. So it's cool to have this meta service or the title service, but from the start on, when a crawler enters our page, the index.html file is empty. Actually, yes, but the Googlebot is a bit more special than the other crawler bots, because the Googlebot loves JavaScript. Hence, the Googlebot actually renders JavaScript before it actually enters the indexing phase. So yes, the Googlebot crawls all the HTML sites, then it pushes the content to another Chrome, headless Chrome instance, and this Chrome instance is rendering the JavaScript, and then giving back this rendered HTML to the Googlebot, so the Googlebot can now finally index it. So yes, if we would say, okay, we just care about users that using Google as a search engine, which, yes, we have to admit has quite the highest marketplace, of course, out there, then we can say, okay, fine, I don't care at all. But yes, except of Google, no browser or no search engine is actually dealing with rendering JavaScript beforehand. And also, and this is quite important, no social media bot. Like I mentioned, the Twitter bot, yes, the Twitter bot is actually trying to display a small preview card, which of course increases the trustability as well. If you have a small link on a Twitter card, and this link might be even a little bit cryptical, we don't think we really want to click on this link, but if it got previewed a little bit and we see a little bit of content over there and a nice image, we are more likely to actually, of course, click on the link as well. So at least for the social media bots, we need to find and come up with a solution of actually feeding this kind of bots already with information. And exactly there is where Angular Universal jumps to the rescue. What is Angular Universal? Actually, it's a community-driven project, but it will sooner or later be part of the Angular core package, actually. So it's a solution for rendering your Angular code on the server side. Okay, but I said in the beginning, we were happily to move away from the server-side PHP thingy thing, that we render the HTML on the server side and pushing it as an HTML page to the client, and the user experience really was bad back then. And now we're telling again, we're pushing everything from the client back to the server. How does this work? It's true, but Angular Universal is not just something like server-side rendering. It does even more. It actually ships the server-side rendering version first, that the bots already get something, and of course the performance, the first initial loading time and first contentful page is faster, but then after it's displayed, it actually swaps out the lazy, longer taking client-side rendered version for user agents that are actually real users. In Angular Universal, of course, you detect quite easily what a user agent is, if it's a bot or if it's actually human. And then for human version, sounds a little bit strange, but for users that are humans, it swaps out afterwards the client-side rendered version with the server-side rendered version. As well, you have actually two options for server-side rendering. Either it's during build time or so-called ahead of time, then you get already some really physical HTML files, or it's on the fly, like by user request. Then of course you have the time where the JavaScript needs to take to render your HTML on the server side. But yeah, you can also already pre-render all the HTML files, and then there's no Java execution time that needs to be taken because the HTML files are already there. And how does it work? It's basically swapping out all the services and everything that needs to be called for browser-side rendering. These services will be swapped out with a rendering layer of server-side rendering. The installation is quite easily. We have the Angular schematic for that. You will be delivered with an Express engine. Express is an Node.js framework. You can more easily write your own server, but you also could actually use the Internet Information Service. It's the IIS from Microsoft as a server to actually deliver your content and deliver these server-side rendered HTML files. So you install it, and then basically create some different entry points. Your tsconfig file, your Angular JSON file will be manipulated to then tell if you want to build your application with server-side. We have a different kind of entry module, not the app module, but the app server module, and then it swaps out all the rendering layers. But I would say we could maybe take a look shortly. I already installed it, so, and I actually already built it as well, because it takes some time. So what we see over here, that we have a tsconfig server JSON file, which actually then has another entry module, and this entry module, of course, then has a server module instead of a browser module. So it's coming from platform server, not from platform browser anymore, and it provides all services that needs to be taken for server-side rendering. The schematic also adds some new build scripts. So for building a server-side rendering version, we just can use this build SSR, and to deliver it, we can just call npm run serve SSR. Then your Express server will be called, and we can just get a server-side rendered version of our application that actually now calls our Express engine, and then the JavaScript renders the HTML on the server side and will be delivered to us. You can easily see that going through the page stores again, and there we see that the app root is not empty anymore, but the whole HTML file, of course it's quite a lot now, is already rendered over there. And that's basically how to add and use, of course, Angular Universal on your website. What you also can see, I added for the first content for pane, a measurement, and we can see that, let me check this first. So we can see that's basically, of course, it's a small application, but to have this, now it took me quite long. But it usually takes like from 400 to 500 milliseconds to have the first content for pane of our server-side rendered version. And the client side is also most probably from 600 to 700. Of course, it's just a few milliseconds or just one few hundred milliseconds, but you can imagine if we have a way, way bigger project or larger project, it really takes a lot of effect if we're using server-side rendering also for performance over here. So basically what you also can do, one thing I want to show maybe as well, is that you can pre-render everything. As I mentioned, it's either pre-rendered on the fly, or you actually can, let me show inside the Angular JSON. Here you have this whole build scripts, and you actually can also pre-render for some specific kind of routes your whole application. And this means if we now run npm run pre-render, it will call this build information, and then these two sub-routes, I mean, I can also of course say, or everything should be pre-rendered, like the default route, or something like, okay, these two routes, these are really oftenly used or oftenly visited, so I really want to just have these routes pre-rendered and having a physically HTML page just for these two routes. So I can run npm pre-render, and then, of course, this takes not too long to wait for a bit, but this would create now the whole two routes. We will get 3 HTML files, like the index HTML file and an HTML file specific for these two routes. As well, what is quite nice is that you can even tell, okay, for this and this and this user agent, please use the server-side rendered version. If you don't trust Angular Universal by swapping this out, client-side, server-side rendering version, of course, sometimes it doesn't work as expected, but you can easily say, okay, for this kind of user agent, I want to deliver the server-side rendered version, and for all human user agents that are not robots, I want to deliver the usual client-side server version. At the end, I like to give some basic SEO advices, because why we're doing this whole thing actually. Of course, we want to be ranked really highly, but we want to get our content indexed quickly. So we don't want to, we want to deliver a lot of information for the crawler bots, feed them with information and give everything what you can to have to them being able to index your website. This means you need to, what we want to achieve is, or what you need to do is to leverage progressive parsing and rendering of HTML. Don't use too much magic for rendering your HTML. You can, in Angular, you can do a lot of great stuff with content projecting or the future friend, future content child. But re-rendering this HTML again and again will, of course, being a little bit disadvantaged if you want to render your HTML and pass your HTML for the crawler bots. So keep it short and simple as well for that too. It's not always the best idea to use one single component and putting everything inside just with content projection. It's even for a human, for a developer, it's quite sometimes confusing. So keep it short and simple. As well, use Lighthouse to actually measure your SEO score beforehand. If you don't know Lighthouse, it's actually a process extension and it's quite nice, where you can actually get some score regarding performance if you have a PWA app or general best practice accessibility and SEO, of course. So we can easily just generate the SEO report for our web page and then see the difference if we maybe added some meta tags to actually achieve a higher SEO. It helps, of course. As well, know your search engine. If you know, I don't care about social media bots or I don't care about other search engines than Google, you might don't need to use Angular Universal even, just because it's fancy and it's new and I talked about it. You might don't need it if you just care about Google users, because Google search engine users, because over there, JavaScript will be pre-rendered, definitely. So to sum up, I really hope you learned something from today. As I said, ping me anytime if you have still some questions. We can use Angular Universal for server-side rendering because it brings a lot of advantage when it comes to SEO and also performance, actually. This was just a small example app I showed, so the times were different that much, but I can assure you in a creator project, it's definitely up to 1 second if you have really a large project. And this, of course, everyone wants to have the content quickly, so this really takes an effect. As well, you can pre-render everything ahead of time, having physical HTML files, and then being delivered, of course, and of course being even faster delivered because it's just HTML instead of having JavaScript pre-rendered before. That said, again, Koda, thank you so much for letting me speak over here. I really hope you